The development of news coverage has changed the way the public absorbs information, but a new article shows that it's more than just consumption that's changed. Political polarization is also on the rise as a result of the news media. Dan Lignato has more.
The 24-hour news cycle is not a new development anymore, but now we may have a closer look as to some of the impacts it has had on both reporting and on politics. CNN, Fox, and MSNBC are the three major TV news channels, but it's the internet that's really shaking things up.
I do think that's absolutely part of it, that, you know, needing to get the information out first, needing to spend a lot of time on being the leader, the cutting edge, things like that.
Because of this need to be first, not all journalists validate the reports or confirm with secondary sources. There is also the problem that social media has created in creating echo chambers and blocking out voices of dissent.
You know, as the old Simon and Garfunkel song, the boxer says, a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. And I think that's exactly what's happening with what a lot of people are hearing. People believe what they want to believe when they hear this stuff.
This only helps add to the polarization. Edward Donner further explains this phenomenon in an article on Quora. Donner says, with more news outlets competing for viewers, it has become easier to seduce reviewers with stories about how the sky is falling than it is to present cogent summaries and analysis of candidates' policy positions. As a consequence, enmity between the political parties has never been greater, and cooperation has never been more scarce. Donner discusses the internet and the formulation of this more negative stance in politicking as a big reason why the polarization of the political parties has continued to take place, and that they've spread further apart on all issues and have become more negative towards each other. For District Wire News, I'm Dan Lignato.
Thanks, Dan, for that report. The 24 hours news cycle has also led to an increase in polarization and negative politics. Reporter Nick Papadis is sitting down with media experts from the American University School of Communication to discuss this increased divide in the political world. Nick?
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm joined today by Dean Roseanne Robertson and Professor Amy Eisner. And first of all, thank you both for being on the show today. So first question, as Dan was saying in his package, a lot of what goes on today is there's a little bit less of a, there's a greater divide that's caused some more partisan media. Could you, we'll start with you, Professor Eisner. Could you talk about the partisan factor in the media and the difference? You see Fox on the one side, you see MSNBC on the other, and kind of the separation between a more partisan media now.
Sure, it's a good question. I think there's so much noise out there that people are trying to find a niche to give themselves a unique voice to stand out a little bit. But it has gotten to be almost laughable how many voices are out there. And so for those of us who are journalism faculty and professors and administrators, we spend a lot of time now teaching people how to know what an objective voice is and how to sort the wheat from the chaff.
And you touched on the topic of academia. So this one I'll throw to you, Dean Robertson. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of academia now when media is so partisan, and what journalists and journalism professors have to do to keep that dialogue and try to teach unbiased media?
It's very difficult because students often come in much like the general public, and they're watching media that they agree with, media that they want to hear about, media that will tell them what they want to hear. And it's really important for a journalist to have a broad education and to know all the sides of the story and to be able to present all sides, even though the audience may not want to hear that. So, you know, I think that in education, we are teaching new technology, but actually the techniques are much the same as they were 50 years ago.
And in a political climate such as DC, where you do get a lot of polarization across, and not much sharing across the aisle, do you find that as a challenge here at American University and in academia in general?
I don't know that it's a challenge. I mean, I think that obviously students will have their own political viewpoints, and I think it's important for us to ensure that those viewpoints are not, don't take over the story. And I think that a lot of students think that their role is to be a cheerleader for a certain political viewpoint or a certain message. And I think that's one of the things that we have to teach is, again, we want our journalists to be fair.
And Professor Eisner, social media has become a big part of journalism and also a big part of politics in general. What are some of the things that have been introduced by not only the 24-hour news cycle on TV, but the 24-hour news cycle online and with Twitter and Facebook?
Probably the biggest thing that's been introduced by the 24/7 social media feeds are the number of inaccuracies that are kind of pouring through our daily lives. Starting when Twitter and early social media efforts were starting, there was a lot of people who were dying before they were dead, and there were wars that happened before there was a shot fired. There was so much information. Everybody was competing so much that they were rushing to get news that turned out not to be accurate up online. I think some of that's calming down, and now there's kind of a nice trend that's happening now because of fake news and 24/7. People are now rushing to fact check things. And so one of the good qualities that's coming out of all of this polarization in 24/7 is that you can actually watch something happening on cable, and then you can watch the social media feeds fact checking it while it's going on. That's actually one of the good outcomes from this.
And I think that gives consumers more responsibility, because you can't simply say, I saw it online, so it must be true. So you have to know what's a legitimate news source, and do I trust that news source? And I think that's how news organizations will build their reputations.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Thank you again to Professor Amy Eisner and Dean Roseanne Robertson. Sarah and Alicia, back to you.
Thanks, Nick, for that discussion. That's all from us at District Wire News. I'm Alicia Abelson.
And I'm Sarah Camerata. Good night.